Beware, dear listener, for what you are about to hear is no mere tale spun from the frayed threads of sanity. This audio, this grim testament, is the final record of a mind unraveling in the embrace of the abyss. If you feel a chill creeping along your spine, if the acrid tang of ozone invades your nostrils, or if a distant hum seems to whisper your name, cease this listening at once. Do not linger here, for the shadows have fangs, and they thirst for your essence. Yet I fear it may already be too late, for the entity that haunts the tunnels of Track 9 travels through sound, weaving its insidious tendrils into the very marrow of your being. It has claimed me, an unfortunate signalman, ensnared in a cycle of terror from which there is no escape. I am recording this so someone knows how I died, and perhaps in my fading lucidity to offer a warning. The train is coming back for me, and the whistle echoes with a malice so profound that it shatters the fabric of my reason. Listen at your peril, for I can hear it screaming. Your name. The whistle, that haunting specter of sound, draws me into a labyrinth of thought, a ponderous spiral that leads to the unfathomable corridors beneath the station. My rational mind, honed through years of diligent study in the obscure realms of railway engineering, acknowledges the peculiarities of Track 9 with a clinical detachment. The peculiar absence of commuters, the stagnant air thick with dust, and the oppressive silence that blankets the platforms all conspire to evoke a sense of unease. As I sifted through the archives of the old railway, a letter surfaced, yellowed and brittle. It whispered of an ancient cataclysm that had befallen this very line. It spoke of a missing train, swallowed whole by the earth, its passengers never to be seen again. The implications of such a disappearance, steeped in lore and speculation, compelled me to investigate. Surely the rational mind must strive to illuminate the darkness with the torch of knowledge. Yet here, in the cold embrace of that forgotten platform, I sensed an oddity that defied explanation. The walls, adorned with non-Euclidean arches, seemed to undulate, transcending the limits of mere architecture. Each echo of my footsteps reverberated in ways that felt almost sentient, as if the very substrate of reality was aware of my presence. I dismissed the tinges of apprehension that clawed at the edges of my consciousness. Science demands scrutiny, relentless inquiry, a pursuit of truth even amongst the shadows. But now, as I traced the outline of those cryptic designs etched into the stone, a chill coursing through the marrow of my bones, I wonder if the herald of madness lies just beyond the veil of understanding. The air grows cold, and I feel the intangible whisper of something ancient and indefinable, beckoning me closer to the abyss from which no traveler returns. Each measured breath of mine stirs the dust that has settled like a grave shroud over the platform, unveiling a miasma of ages long forgotten. The air, laden with a musty odor reminiscent of decay and disuse, wraps around me like a spectral cloak, a reminder of the spectral history that lingers in this forsaken place. I cannot help but marvel at the cyclopean columns that rise from the ground, their surfaces etched with cryptic symbols, some of which seem to writhe under the flickering illumination of my lantern, casting shadows that dance like phantoms in the dark. As I tread deeper into the bowels of the station, a strange dissonance fills the silence, an uncanny absence of the normal sounds of human activity. No faint murmur of distant conversations, no echo of rushing footsteps, only an oppressive stillness that seems to absorb the very essence of my being. I strain my ears, half expecting to hear the distant chug of an approaching train or the impatient shuffle of a traveler, yet all that greets me is the echo of my heartbeat, thrumming in my ears like a funeral dirge. A draft, sudden and icy, flits past me, carrying with it the whispers of the past, a cacophony of regrets and unfulfilled journeys. It brushes the nape of my neck, a tactile reminder of the unseen forces that dwell in the dark recesses of this forgotten world. I shudder involuntarily, yet I am drawn further into the depths, my curiosity igniting a flame of determination amidst the encroaching shadows. I pause under an archway that seems to bend in an impossible manner, distorting not only the space around it, but the very perception of reality itself. The curvature of the stonework feels wrong, as if it exists in defiance of Euclidean geometry, inviting a sense of vertiginous disorientation. My mind, steeped in the rigors of empirical thought, struggles to grasp the implications of such aberrations, each moment steeping me deeper into a well of existential dread. Yet, the siren call of the unknown, that damnable whistle echoing faintly in the recesses of my mind, urges me onward. I am but a moth, drawn to the flame of inexplicable truths, oblivious to the darkness that waits to envelop me. What knowledge could lie hidden in the shadows of Track 9? What revelations await those brave enough or foolish enough to traverse the path that leads into the heart of this uncanny abyss? The whistle, an ethereal lament, climbs to a crescendo, weaving itself into the very fabric of my consciousness, each note plunging me deeper into the murky depths of some primordial horror. I advance, step by hesitant step, the sound growing richer, more insistent, as if it were a living entity, beckoning me to partake in the secrets that lie beyond the veil of my understanding. As I traverse further, the very ground beneath my feet becomes a quagmire of dampness and decay, reminiscent of some ancient morass, the stench of mildew and rot clawing at my throat. I choke back a rising tide of nausea, yet the magnetic pull of the whistle compels me onward, inexorably leading me through a passage that undulates with a palpable sense of menace. The walls, slick and glistening, seem to pulse as if they were breathing, exhaling a fetid warmth that envelops me like the embrace of a long-lost lover, deceitful and suffocating. Suddenly, a flash of movement catches my eye, a flicker at the periphery of my vision. I spin around, pulse racing, heart thundering in my chest like a war drum. Yet, the shadows remain indifferent, silent witnesses to my growing dread. The rational part of my mind urges retreat, yet it is drowned out by the inexorable thrumming of curiosity, a dark hunger that has began to unravel the very fiber of my sanity. Ahead, within the confines of my lantern's flickering light, I glimpse a doorway, its outline obscured by an almost sentient darkness that defies explanation. The door itself is crafted of a substance that seems to drink in the light, absorbing it greedily until the surrounding air shimmers with a malevolent vibrancy. Esoteric symbols, far more intricate than those adorning the columns, spiral across its surface, twisting and contorting in ways that unsettle my understanding of the natural order. I step closer, compelled, my breath quickening as I reach out to touch the surface. The moment my fingers make contact, a pulse reverberates through me, a cold shock that sends tendrils of ice crawling up my spine. The door flares to life, revealing an abyssal void beyond, a yawning chasm that seems to beckon with the promise of unspeakable knowledge and unfathomable terror. The whistle crescendos to a fevered pitch, a chorus of maddening tones that echoes in my skull, drowning out my thoughts. I feel the room shift, warp, as though the very laws of reality are unraveling before my eyes. The shadows converge, swirling around me like a tempest, and I am gripped with a sickening realization that I stand on the precipice of something far greater, far darker than I could have ever anticipated. With trembling resolve, I cross the threshold and plunge into the void, the sensation of weightlessness enveloping me like a shroud. I am swallowed by darkness, the whistle now a cacophony of voices, overlapped and intertwining, each one a thread woven into the tapestry of a cosmic dread. that stretches beyond the comprehension of mortal minds. In this inky abyss, I feel sanity slipping away, fragile and ephemeral, the fabric of my identity unraveling like a thread pulled from a tattered tapestry. I glimpse shadows flitting past, grotesque forms dancing just beyond the edge of perception, and with each breath, I am made aware of the insignificance of my existence against the infinite canvas of the eldritch cosmos. The horrors that await me are not merely physical. No, they are the very essence of knowledge, the truths that man was never meant to uncover. And yet I am here, standing at the abyss, irrevocably committed to this path of desolation. I feel the weight of ancient eyes upon me, unseen and ever watchful, waiting for me to make my choice, to embrace the madness or to be consumed by it entirely. The threshold has been crossed, and I am forever changed, a mere whisper in the dark, teetering on the edge of oblivion. The darkness pulses around me, a living entity that seems to breathe with a sinister intent. An unsettling scent of decay and something indescribably sweet fills the air, coiling around my senses and clawing at the edges of my consciousness. I shudder as I become aware of the wet sound of footsteps, slithering, dragging, as though unseen forms are pacing just beyond the reach of my flickering lantern. The very walls of this abyss twist and distort, fractals of geometry that elude comprehension, their angles sharp enough to carve into sanity itself. I whirl about, fighting to maintain my grip on reality, yet the echoes of the whistle have transformed into a discordant symphony, each note a dagger that pierces the veil of my mind. The voices whisper secrets of unfathomable dread, a chorus of anguish that crescendos into a cacophony of despair. I stumble forward, propelled by instincts I cannot fully comprehend, each step unsteady as the ground shifts beneath me, a quagmire of pulsating shadows that threaten to engulf my very soul. As I venture deeper into this realm, I am struck by the grotesqueness of the figures flitting just outside my perception. They tease my mind with glimpses of their hideous forms, limbs that bend at impossible angles, eyes that bulge and recede in a nauseating rhythm, mouths stretching into grins that defy the limits of flesh. Each fleeting vision sends shockwaves of terror through my veins, reminding me that I am an interloper in a domain where the laws of nature lose their grip, where the macabre and the surreal intermingle in a dance of cosmic insanity. The air grows heavy with whispering echoes that tease at the fringes of my mind, taunting me with glimpses of knowledge I dare not grasp. I recoil as a shadow lunges forward, a tendril of darkness that snakes towards me, brushing against my skin like a cold caress. Panic surges in my chest. I realize with dawning horror that the whispers are not mere sounds. They are sentient, hungry for my thoughts, seeking to siphon the very essence of my being. My mind is not for feasting, I cry out, the words torn from my lips by the sheer force of my terror. Yet my voice is swallowed by the abyss, lost amidst the tumult of maddening whispers that now crescendo, drowning me in their insidious tide. A surge of despair washes over me. It feels as though the very air has thickened, turned viscous with despair, each breath a struggle against the inevitable pull of the void. In this maelstrom of chaos, I glimpse a flicker of light in the distance, an eldritch glow that beckons with the promise of revelation or doom. I stagger towards it, driven by an insatiable urge to understand, to uncover the truths that lie in wait. But with each step, the ground beneath my feet contorts, shifting into a grotesque parody of reality, and I find myself spiraling into a vortex of torment, an inescapable descent into madness. The geometry of my surroundings warps with each heartbeat, twisting my perception of space until I no longer know which way is up or down. I am ensnared in a labyrinth of despair, where time collapses upon itself and the echoes of 1,000 tortured souls reverberate in my mind. The walls seem to close in, the air thick with the stench of decay, as I plunge deeper into the heart of the abyssal nightmare. I falter, my sanity teetering on the brink of annihilation, as the whispers of the unseen grow louder, clamoring for my attention, their hunger insatiable. In that moment of despair, I realize that the true horror lies not merely in the grotesque apparitions that stalk the shadows, but in the knowledge that I, too, am becoming like them, an echo of something that was once human, now merely a vessel for dread. With a final, desperate gasp, I plunge toward the glowing light that promises either liberation or absolute obliteration, knowing full well that the choice remains a cruel illusion. I am lost in the void, a mere whisperer in the dark, forsaking the remnants of my identity as I embrace the inescapable clutches of madness. The eldritch glow intensifies as I plunge forward, revealing a sight that defies all rational comprehension. My eyes, straining against the non-Euclidean geometry that twists and warps the very fabric of reality, struggle to comprehend the vastness of the chamber that unfolds before me. Shapes unfurl in the shadows, an impossible architecture of cyclopean towers spiraling into infinity, their surfaces slick and glistening with an unholy sheen that suggests both organic life and rot. Maddening angles fracture my perception like shards of glass. I am surrounded by a cacophony of colors that bleed into one another, hues unknown to the mortal eye swirling in a disorienting tempest, each strain of light punctuating the overwhelming stench of decay and something far worse, an odor that hints at cosmic wrongness, an abomination that stirs the very core of my being. The air is thick, viscous with terror, each breath a struggle against the fetid atmosphere that clings like a shroud. In the depths of that accursed chamber, I glimpse the source of the insatiable whispers, an abominable mass, an amorphous entity of shifting forms that seems to exist in multiple states of being. It pulsates with a rhythm that mimics a heartbeat, casting grotesque shadows across the warped surfaces. Limbs, not quite human, extend and retract, writhing in an ecstatic dance of primordial hunger, while eyes, countless eyes, stare into the void, hungry for knowledge, for souls, for the essence of existence itself. Each step I take is accompanied by the sickening sound of wet footsteps, a slithering cacophony that echoes through the chamber, reverberating against the cyclopean walls. The entity's surface undulates as if breathing, a grotesque mimicry of life, and in that motion I perceive the full horror of its form, a confluence of nightmares, an amalgamation of despair that embodies the very essence of madness. As I approach, the whispers coalesce into a guttural chant, a melody of sorrow that reverberates in the marrow of my bones. Join us, they beckon. Become one with the infinite. My resolve falters as the realization dawns. This is not merely an entity. It is a consciousness, a collective memory of all who have ventured into the abyss and succumbed to its call. It knows my fear, my despair, and it delights in the anguish I bring. In that moment, the geometry of the chamber shifts violently, pulling me closer to the abyssal heart of the entity. The walls melt away, revealing vast cosmic landscapes, teeming with horrors unnameable, and I am seized by a terror that overshadows all reason. I see the remnants of those who have come before, a myriad of forms, all trapped in an eternal cycle of suffering, their screams echoing through the void, begging for release. My own screams join the chorus of the damned as I am drawn inexorably into the maw of the unknowable. I feel the tendrils of the entity wrap around me, an embrace of despair as it pulls me closer, promising enlightenment through obliteration. A final surge of sanity battles against the tide of oblivion, and in that agonizing moment, I am faced with a revelation that shatters my mind. The true nature of existence is not creation, but an endless cycle of consumption, a relentless descent into the abyss where hope is a distant memory, and all that remains is the insatiable hunger of the void. As I am enveloped by the abyssal mass, I surrender to the clutches of madness, my essence merging with the collective despair, becoming yet another whisper lost in the eternal night. The glow dims, the geometry of the chamber collapses upon itself, and I am left to drift among the echoes, a lost fragment of a once human soul, forever entwined in the grotesque dance of the eldritch. The last vestiges of my humanity flicker like the dying light of a distant star, consumed in the relentless void that surrounds me. Yet here I remain, ensconced within the shrouded confines of a decaying sanctum, one I dared construct in a futile attempt to shield myself from the primal chaos that beckons with every fleeting moment. The words of the entity resonate within the very marrow of my being. Join us. I clutch this journal, a tether to a reality that slips further from my grasp with each passing heartbeat, the rhythm of which echoes the pulsating horror outside. It is a grotesque mockery of life, this thing that lurks beyond the threshold of my fragile sanctuary. The whispers, now maddeningly insistent, seep through the cracks of my mind, infiltrating my thoughts with their seductive promises. My breath comes in ragged gasps, tainted with the acrid stench of decay, each inhalation a reminder of the abyss that waits hungrily for my surrender. The geometry of this accursed chamber warps and contorts, each angle skewed in defiance of reason. I am ensnared in a kaleidoscope of visions, fleeting images of those who have succumbed to the all-consuming maw, faces twisted in the throes of despair, their eyes wide with the knowledge of what lies beyond. I shiver as I realize that I too am destined to be but a fragment of this eternal suffering, a fleeting whisper in the chorus of the damned. Yet the entity, this abominable amalgamation of all-consuming hunger, has not yet claimed me. The walls of my sanctuary pulse in rhythm with the heart of the void, vibrating with an eldritch energy that seeps into my very soul. I can feel it, tentacles of despair reaching, probing, yearning to pull me from my fragile haven. The wet footsteps echo, a cacophony that fills my ears with the sound of my own impending doom. Their slithering rhythm, a sinister lullaby that promises obliteration. I attempt to record my thoughts, to capture the essence of this moment, yet my tongue begins to falter. Each word feels like a futile battle against the abyss, a struggle to maintain a semblance of identity in the face of unfathomable forces. As I speak, I feel the tendrils of the entity wrapping around my mind, squeezing, constricting, and with each utterance, I sense my very essence slipping away, dissolving into the collective suffering that surrounds me. The geometry of my mind begins to warp, perceptions twisting into nonsensical shapes as I struggle to comprehend the transformation that is overtaking me. I gaze at my trembling hands, and to my horror, they are no longer my own. Flesh ripples and contorts, shifting into some grotesque parody of humanity, an invitation for the abyss to swallow me whole. I can feel the whispers growing louder, merging into a cacophony of madness that drowns out my thoughts. I drop the journal, the pages fluttering like anguished specters as they fall, the words I've inscribed dissolving into a fog of confusion and dread. I am changing, irrevocably, a vessel for the despair of countless souls who have succumbed to the insatiable hunger of the void. The familiar shape of my body twists and contorts as I feel the last remnants of my sanity unravel, my mind a tapestry of horrors woven from the threads of those who have come before me. I hear it then, a sound that chills me to my very core, the low, resounding thrum of something vast and incomprehensible, breaching the threshold of my sanctuary. The entity, with its myriad eyes glistening in the dim light, extends its cyclopean form toward me, hungry for the final surrender. In this moment, I realize I am but a vessel, a mere vessel for the abyss, and I know, oh how I know, that in my final moments, I shall become one with the whispers of the damned, forever entwined in the grotesque dance of the eldritch. As the last vestiges of my identity fade, I am drawn inexorably toward the infinite, the insatiable hunger of the void welcoming me with open, writhing tendrils. The screams of those trapped within this cycle of despair rise to a crescendo, enveloping me in their collective agony. I can no longer resist. Madness has claimed me, and as the shadows close in, I surrender to the darkness, lost forever within the depths of the abyss. Comment now. I'll never set foot on track 9 again.
Now tell me, what detail tested your sanity first? Drop it in the comments, then click the next video, because the veil opens even wider in our next descent into the mythos.